believe that when the BBI task force was formed, it's like there was some predetermined outcome, because once
In whose favor then?
in the favor of the president and the former PM Raila Odinga, because actually when it was even being launched, and the sentiments which came from the political space was that this thing is, there is a direction which is taking towards the referendum and the change in the structure. Maybe when you want, if you look at the history and the sentiments from both of them and their allies, you'll see that there was something like a predetermined outcome from that. And we actually, there was speculation from the day one that there would be something like some change in the system, change in the constitution and all, which is by referendum.
All right.
And I don't want to imagine that this is a matter of coincidence, because this is something which I can say it was well calculated. And even before the release, we can be able to see that there's a clear pattern of what is going to come up. Because we've heard from Brace Kenya, we've heard from various circles calling for the structuring of the presidency. And all, it's not in favor of the common mwananchi. If you look at even the various presentations which are coming from, especially the political space, we are seeing something towards so much on governance, towards on presidents, as opposed to the 9 points of the tribalism, the
national
inclusion,
ethos,
the national ethos.
All right.
We haven't heard much about that.
Okay.
But the thing which is so much loud and shouting is on the presidency elections and who will get what. So I tend to think that there is, it may not really bring the intended, the purpose to which we as the citizens see.
All right, yes.
Ayub, the predetermined result that we wanted from the BBI is to ensure that we have an inclusive government. Now, be it as it may, the issue of governance in this country is so emotive,
All right.
that it must be loudest. It is just one of the 9 things we are addressing, my friend. And just because it is the loudest, it doesn't mean it's the only issue we are addressing. We are addressing corruption to the fullest. We've been fighting corruption left, right, center. And we are now on even the drug lords and barons. So we are dealing with these issues one by one, as low as you may think, but we are on the path to success.
All right.
And Dan said something that touched my ears, rubbed my ears on the wrong side.
Right of reply before we go to the next
Yes,
topic. All right.
that when a Kalenjin wants to ascend to power, then it is not about a Kalenjin ascending to power. It is about a Kenyan who is qualified ascending to power.
All right.
Please, let's have a discussion in this country where the most qualified, and that's why we have a chapter on governance and leadership in this country.
All right. Well illustrated in the Constitution on integrity, and very well, of course, captured and envisioned in the Constitution. Gentlemen, let's now shift our attention to what will be, of course, standoff in the following counties: in Muranga, Laikipia, Isiolo, Marsabit, Kitui, Meru, Tharaka Nithi, Bungoma, Kisumu, Homa Bay, Machakos, Nyeri, Taita Taveta, Kericho, Elgeyo Marakwet, West Pokot, Nakuru, Baringo, and Samburu counties. Dan, coming to you first on this note. It all started even prior to the reading of the national budget for the fiscal year 2019-2020, when the 2 committees of the bicameral house failed to come up with a resolution to resolve the standoff between the senators and the members of the National Assembly. And that's having an impact in terms of the trickling down effect on the counties, and it's going to be halting services at the counties. How has this sort of sibling rivalry at the top of the lawmaking process house, the bicameral house to be specific, having an impact on the devolved units across the 47 counties?
I think we have indicated, I think some times ago when this discussion took shape here, I think probably the same panel had actually warned that there was going to be a halt of services in the county. I think it's the same panel probably who said, if all this goes like this, then we are going to come back here and see sometimes when the workers will boycott and down their tools because they are not paid. I think it's come to pass. And see, this problem about, the show of the supremacy on the passage of division revenue bill each and every financial year it's becoming a problem, a disaster in this country. Because even as we speak, right now, these nurses that are going on strike, like you said, county workers and county health workers. Next time, there might be other union also going on strike. So, if you hold, for example, services that are basic, like healthcare, even as we strive towards attainment of universal healthcare, in the Big Four agenda, it's time that now the executive, in the spirit of trying to veto this process, would actually relook into why would counties, and I don't think that the counties do not have capacity to sustain workers, especially health workers. I think it's a deliberate effort, and by the two assemblies, I mean the National Assembly and the Senate, these wars are not in the benefit of the counties.
All right.
So now, as we check, look at what even I think it should be Robert Duba who actually gave a warning that even some of the governors are planning to travel and visit. Some are having a elaborate plan for exchange visit. Look at workers who are the basic, providing basic healthcare services to the counties, are on strike. So where is the priority of the county? Where is the priority of the government?
Okay.
So I think it's important now that the concerned parties, within the National Assembly and the Senate, would have a caucus, an immediate caucus to address this, or even the executive itself, to try to resolve the stalemate that is here now. Okay,
Kaberi, I'm sure you must have been observing the developments at the counties, and this equally is having an enormous amount of consequence when it comes to the running out of affairs at the 47 counties. Now, I have listed just some, and they number up to more than 23 governors have paid their staff, meaning that 24 haven't paid their staff. Now, considering this as perhaps the three-dimensional complex sort of scenario here, the national government blamed for not releasing or the exchequer, and then we have the sibling rivalry at the level of the bicameral house, and then we have the governors themselves who at some point mismanaged and mishandled the county economies. Of what consequence does it pile or perhaps have on the devolved units or the devolved system of governance generally, which is at its infancy, perhaps the breastfeeding process, and 6 years after the inception of the idea, 9 years after the inception of the idea, 6 years after the conceptualization of the idea, and of what consequence is it to Kenyans who now feel economically deprived?
Well, let me speak in the point as a common Kenyan, and whereby I'm expecting a lot of services from the devolved units, and especially on the services which are devolved, like the healthcare, the basic education, and all that. Looking at that, and when we have all these things requires resources and some structures, and according to the constitution, there is some allocation which should go to the county to sustain all that. But looking at the scenario which is there, there will be a lot of things which will not be moving on the right direction, because this is not a matter of payroll only. We have only looked at the recurrent budget, whereby you're talking about the salaries and all that. But looking also the development aspect will also be made to stall. Because I tend to imagine that maybe a county may be having a reserve for some development, but if there is a threat on the issue of salaries and all that, if you have rent from the governors, those who have paid the salaries, some have gone to very big extra miles for them to cover up that gap, so as to avert the issue of strike. So in terms of also development and operation, this is really going to be affected if this will not be solved. Because looking at right now, the Senate and the National Assembly, they're on recess, meaning that there is let me say there's nothing tangible in terms of solving this thing. So maybe what I would like really to advise is that we can have just a round table between the Senate and the National Assembly, however they may want to put it, maybe an informal sit-down, because if this thing won't be solved, we are really going to have a very big challenge in the operation of the county government, which is a government by itself, and which is offering a lot of services to the common man.
Okay, an idea that we all dreamt about under the new constitution. Victor Marende, on this note then, we seem to be having this rivalry, yes, but why are the two members of the House, that is the bicameral House, the Senators and the National Assembly, using the county governments or the devolved units as the swinging pendulum to throw it in either direction? And what do you think that is going to be saying about the political script of the reservations that they might hold?
You know, this is a problem that was anticipated. The writers of the Constitution, 2010, however complete this Constitution might have been, were not clear on the separation of powers between the Senate and the National Assembly. They did not tell us which house is superior, and that we were only left to assume that the Senate is the upper house. And it's a discussion that has been on in this country. And to some extent, it even went to the Chief Justice Willy Mutunga on the same bill. And I want to believe that the division of revenue, and especially on the share of just, there is a minimum share according to the Constitution, Article 206.
Yep.
And we need to concentrate on the minimum share. And I'm happy that the National Assembly last week passed the 310 and gazetted it, so that at least the minimum share is there. But as they deal with the minimum share, the role of the Senate must not be ignored in the budget-making process, because then the Senate has a role to play in the making of the budget in this country. Now, the Senate is the protector of the county government in this country. So then we need to ensure that that role by the Senate is not assumed. And if in any case, these houses need to have some interdependence.
All right.
So that then they work together. Now, I agree that we need to form a caucus that will handle this issue. But for how long will we be forming roundtable meetings in this country? It means someone will be causing a stalemate, then going for a roundtable to get another allowance. Because when they meet in these roundtables, they are again paid an allowance. So I believe the set commissions in the Constitution failed to do their role. The Constitution Implementation Commission that was headed by Nyachai failed to advise on this issue. And they went home like that. That was a failure. To this moment, they didn't expound on what was to happen.
Okay.
Now, Robert Duba is also another one who only wants to take workers on strike. Yet when county governments are not offering services, he is very silent and enjoying somewhere.
Well,
so I want to see union leaders who speak when services are not offered and when their workers have problems. Then I also have a problem with health being a devolved function. As we may wish that these county governments have the capacity, as my friend Dan says, these governments are unique in their own ways.
Right.
Nairobi can, but what about a county like Turkana? Would they be able to handle their healthcare properly?
Of course not.
Of course not.
And
in the Big Four agenda, we are talking about universal healthcare. We are not talking about coverage. You know, universal healthcare and universal health coverage is also different. I think, as a matter of fact, the president needs to address the issue about coverage first. How many hospitals do we have in the country? What is the reach?
Okay.
Then after the reach, now we can talk about the care. But if then we have the capacity to handle both at the same time, then we need to handle universal health care and coverage at a go. But then if I were to advise, healthcare as a unit needs to go back to the national government.